Not one note in heaven's song was missed. Today we're going to read this passage. I'm going to have to find out where exactly in the text this passage is found. This is somewhat famous only because Ken Wapnick, who really loved music and understood the course to be like a piece of music. And remember, it starts with, it started with, this is a Course in Miracles, please take notes, right? And there's definitely a play on words there, that the Course was like a song, right? And people have talked about how the Course is symphonic. It's like a symphony, in that it brings in themes. Early on in the Course, there are themes that are brought in, then they're kind of put aside for a while, then they're brought back later, and they're motifs and themes that keep appearing and disappearing and reappearing in different forms, and it's a brilliant symphony. That's one way to look at it. That's just one way. I definitely think the metaphor of music is very helpful in understanding the Course, and obviously Jesus does talk about music often enough in the Course. For example, there's another great passage called the Forgotten Song that I will do very soon as well. So here is, we're going to do this reading. I've been using this book called Simply A Course in Miracles. This is a book that I put out. It's on Amazon. Alawalani is my pen name, and you can find it on Amazon if you're interested. Not one note in heaven's song was missed. Here we go. God gave his teacher to replace the one you made, not to conflict with it. And what he would replace has been replaced. Time lasted but an instant in your mind, with no effect upon eternity. And so is all time past, and everything exactly as it was before the way to nothingness was made. The tiny tick of time in which the first mistake was made, and all of them within that one mistake, held also the correction for that one, and all of them that came within the first. And in that tiny instant, time was gone, for that was all it ever was. What God gave answer to is answered and is gone. To you who still believe you live in time and know not it is gone, the Holy Spirit still guides you through the infinitely small and senseless maze you still perceive in time, though it has long since gone. You think you live in what is past. Each thing you look upon you saw but for an instant long ago, before its unreality gave way to truth. Not one illusion still remains unanswered in your mind. Uncertainty was brought to certainty so long ago that it is hard indeed to hold it to your heart as if it were before you still. The tiny instant you would keep and make eternal passed away in heaven too soon for anything to notice it had come. What disappeared too quickly to affect the simple knowledge of the Son of God can hardly still be there for you to choose to be your teacher. Only in the past, quote, an ancient past too short to make a world in answer to creation, did the world appear to rise. So very long ago, for such a tiny interval of time, that not one note in heaven's song was missed. Yet in each unforgiving act or thought, in every judgment and in all belief in sin, is that one instant still called back, as if it could be made again in time. You keep an ancient memory before your eyes, and he who lives in memories alone is unaware of where he is. This is a fascinating passage. There's a lot here. It's very challenging to understand this passage. Don't worry if you didn't get it. I'm not sure if we're going to really do it justice in this video, but let's talk a little bit about it at least. I'm not sure if anyone fully understands what this is saying, but I think we can get close to the basic meaning here. God gave his teacher to replace the one you made. Who is God's teacher? The Holy Spirit, right? when God talks about his teacher or his guide or his voice, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the Holy Spirit. So remember that God doesn't do anything. God doesn't know about the illusion. God really didn't even give his teacher in reality, because there was no need for it, because there is no time in reality and there is no separation from God in reality. So understand this metaphorically. God gave his teacher to replace the one you made. And who was that? That is the ego, right? We made the ego. We made a teacher that was antithetical to God, or to God's teacher, the Holy Spirit. But God gave the Holy Spirit not to conflict with the ego. That's what he says, right? God gave his teacher to replace the one you made, not to conflict with it. And what he would replace has been replaced, right? So the Holy Spirit, the answer that God gave, removed the ego right away. Did not take any time whatsoever. It has been replaced. The ego is no more. The ego is already undone. Time lasted but an instant in your mind, with no effect upon eternity. This is fascinating, right? Now it's saying that in reality, you are still there. Our true self is still at home in God. There is no time. There is only eternity, right? The eternal now. And so is all time past and everything exactly as it was before the way to nothingness was made, right? The ego is nothingness. The world, as we know it, is really nothing. The ego is nothing. The tiny tick of time in which the first mistake was made, that's the tiny mad idea. And all of them within that one mistake, the tiny mad idea, held also the correction for that one. So, and the correction here is with capital C, which means the Holy Spirit. So the Holy Spirit was the correction for the tiny mad idea, and that happened. It didn't even happen, but it was like that, right? The tiny mad idea crept in, and then the Holy Spirit was there, and it was gone. And all of them came within the first. So the tiny tick of time in which the first mistake was made, and all of them within that one mistake, held also the correction for that one, and all of them that came within the first. And in that tiny instant, time was gone, for that was all it ever was. Right? Time was gone. Time is an illusion in reality, right? We live by time. Time and space is very real to us right now, because we are still in the illusion that really never was. This is why this sounds crazy, and it sounds almost impossible that this could be true. This is what Jesus is saying, and because he speaks with such authority, and this course has such authority, it's wise to listen, I would say. So what God gave answer to is answered and is gone. To you who still believe you live in time and know not it is gone, the Holy Spirit still guides you through the infinitely small and senseless maze you still perceive in time, though it has long since gone. So now Jesus uses the term Holy Spirit, right? Just to clarify that he's been talking about the Holy Spirit, right? So the Holy Spirit still guides you through the infinitely small and senseless maze you still perceive it. This is a very fascinating line here. The senseless maze that we live in, right? The Holy Spirit is still there to guide us. You think you live in what is past. Each thing you look upon, you saw but for an instant long ago, before its unreality gave way to truth. Not one illusion still remains unanswered in your mind. Uncertainty was brought to certainty so long ago that it is hard indeed to hold it to your heart as if it were before you still. We really need to unpack this challenging to understand what is really being said. But I think, the gist of it is that this world it was over, as Jesus says elsewhere in the course, in the text, he says, this world was over long ago, right? The tiny mad idea happened, or seemed to happen, The answer was given in that very moment, almost like nullifying it in that very moment. It didn't even really happen. It happened, but it didn't happen. And we still think we're here, but in reality, there is that part of us which is really connected with the Holy Spirit, which is one with the Holy Spirit, which knows that this is all a dream and that we are still at home. And that is what we need to tune into more and more. That part of ourself that already knows the truth, already knows that this world is a dream, that this world is an illusion. The tiny instant you would keep and make eternal passed away in heaven too soon for anything to notice it had come. Right? So it was gone as soon as it came. What disappeared too quickly to affect the simple knowledge of the Son of God can hardly still be there for you to choose to be your teacher. Right? So in other words, the ego really, we take the ego as our teacher most of the time, but the ego is nothing, right? The ego does not exist. The ego is non-existent, just as this world is non-existent. So why would we take the ego to be our teacher? Now we need to take Jesus and the Holy Spirit's hand to help us out of this senseless maze that we have created. Not created, but we have made, right? Because there's a difference between the word creation and making. Ego makes, God creates for the Course, right? Only in the past, an ancient past too short to make a world an answer to creation. And before I said quotations, but I don't think the quotations are correct. Only in the past, an ancient past too short to make a world an answer to creation, did this world appear to rise. So the world really didn't even come into being. It seems to have in the dream, in the tiny tick of time. Jesus uses that term, the tiny tick of time that we have taken to be real is really does not, right? The world does not exist. So very long ago, for such a tiny interval of time, that not one note in heaven's song was missed. It's a very important, this is the line, right, that we've been waiting for. This is a line that I'm basing this on. This is a line that Ken Wapnick often referred to. Not one note in heaven's song was missed. In other words, the music never stopped. The song of love between the Father and the Son, that the song that the Father sings to the Son and the Son sings back to the Father, that music never stopped, never missed a beat, right? Only from where we sit right now, where we're in pain or suffering, to the extent that we are in pain and suffering, and to the extent to which we have ruled out heaven in our minds, this is fantasy. This does not make sense. This seems crazy. It's like crazy talk. This is like impossible. But from Jesus's vantage point, this is all true. This is the truth, right? That heaven is the only reality. God is the only reality. Love is the only reality. Nothing really happened in reality. Time and space are completely illusory. The ego is completely illusory. So very long ago, for such a tiny interval of time, not one note in heaven's song was missed. Yet in each unforgiving act or thought, in every judgment, and in all belief in sin, is that one instant still called back, as if it could be made again in time. As if it could be made again in time. You keep an ancient memory before your eyes, and he who lives in memories alone is unaware of where he is. So, anytime that we let the ego become our teacher, we let nothing be our teacher, when we let madness be our teacher, when we let the tiny mad idea from that tiny tick of time be our teacher, we are keeping this ancient memory long since past in front of us. And so what we do is we reinforce this world and reinforce the ego. We make them real, and so they are real. But they're not real, but we've made them real in our mind. And we can do that for sure, right? But we don't have to, right? We can get on the bandwagon. We can get on the Holy Spirit's bandwagon and get back to the song, right? Get back to the song of heaven, and which has never stopped. The music has never stopped. We can be in our pain and suffering, in our judgment, in our unforgiveness, if we wish. But why would we, knowing what we know now? We still might, because we don't completely trust it, but hopefully we're seeing that we really want joy, we really want peace, we really want the song, right? We really want the music. We don't want the pain and suffering anymore. And if we don't, then we will do this course. We're going to practice the course. We're going to practice these lessons and make this a priority. So I'm sure if you're listening to this video and you got through all this video, you're probably saying yes. So thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful. And I'm going to do the Forgotten Song next. Stay tuned for that. Not today, but another day. So keep the music, keep on rocking, keep on keeping on, and let the music play. And we'll see you very soon on the brother side. See ya. Thanks.